Okay, part 2, sand, finish, and fire. Here are my pieces dried. You can see airspace between the front and the back near the string. I filled these in with syringe clay, and I ran syringe along the crack between the pieces. I used a paintbrush to add water and a rubber finger, which is also called a clay shaper, to add water and smooth the edges out. So I had to do many applications, like half an earring at a time. For each earring, I added, smoothed, then let it dry, and then I did the other half of the earring. And inside the U shape of the earring and out, which makes for 4 applications per earring. So when all the cracks and the air spaces were filled and the earrings were dry, I decided to cut off the excess string so I could sand the edges. I tried a scissors at first, but it left too much string sticking out. It just couldn't cut close enough. So I took a scalpel and I kind of sawed each string, really supporting my earring in the process. Do not cut toward your fingers like I started to here, and be sure to take the bits of string out of your filings catch tray. So emery boards or small metal files would work here. I placed my earrings together and held them together, and I took an emery board to even up the ends. And again, I really supported my earrings by holding with feather fingers as close as possible to where I was sanding. That's the trick. And I held them together and tried to match their shapes as much as possible. I thought the most important would be to have them be the same height. If they were far off in shape, I could actually fire them and then hammer them to a more identical shape while I was finishing them. Then I took my favorite tool and began sanding their edges. This is called a super nail. It's a battery-driven nail file. I started with an aggressive file head and sanded, being extra careful around the thinner parts, and then I took a less aggressive file head and sanded some more. I used 3M sanding sponges to get into the recessed areas and for smoothing down the front and the back. Careful not to impact too much the stamped design on the front. If you recall, where the string was caused a bulge in the earring, which I kind of liked. And I sanded around this then by holding the bulge just off the 3M sanding sponge to avoid taking anything off of that bulge. I rolled the 3M sponge then to sand above and below the bulge. I often emphasize this sanding step, the sanding of dry clay, in the creation process because I think it is really important and overlooked often. When I was making this short video, I had over 30 minutes of film of me sanding. And I can't stress enough how your piece turns out in the end really comes down to how much you sand it at this point. Sure, you can do a lot with polishing discs on the flexible shaft, but really, it's a lot easier to put your finished look on during this stage. Here are the shorter, fatter ones ready for the kiln. Here are the taller, leaner ones. I am pointing out that these are still pretty rough around the string where the wire will go. I can't really do more because the string is still in the way. So I'm going to fire these and then use some files or tools on the flexible shaft to smooth out these parts when I am finishing the earrings. So you may know by now that I like to fire my pieces in or on aluminum hydrate, and I have a free course on this at I Love Silver if you're interested in that. So I plopped these into the aluminum hydrate and I fired these at the maximum temperature and the maximum time. Okay, on to patina, finish, and assemble.